So I am not that excited for the May cards. I know a lot of people are really excited about them, and that's why I kind of hate making this video and being so negative. Um, but I think there's a lot of problems with this season of Marvel. I don't know if I like the card design as much as everybody is making out to be, and I think I'm seeing a lot of people just miss out on problems that I think would be really bad for the game if they kept going in this direction. So let's just go ahead and get into the cards. I'll kind of explain a little more with each individual one. But man, in general, if you wanted a more positive video, this is probably not it, because I'm going to be a little bit negative with the cards today. So let's go ahead and start off with Nebula. Nebula is a 1/1. Each turn your opponent doesn't play a card here, +2 power, except for the turn you played this. So if you play it on turn 1, it doesn't matter if they play something there, but she is going to power up on turn 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe even 7, if they're not playing a cards there. And again, this card's absolutely broken. I said I wasn't excited for the cards. There's other reasons why, but this card is pretty damn broken. I mean, I think you look at this card and it's just it's such an obvious, this is the one drop that you play in like 95% of decks that want a one drop. I don't know, she's just so good. With zero synergy, with no deck building around her at all, you really don't even have to build a deck around her. She's almost always going to be a 1/3 or a 1/5, sometimes even a 1/7, which is, I mean, that's Titania levels of power, that's Ebony Maw levels of power, with basically no downside. In fact, there's actually an upside in which you're forcing your opponent to play the lanes that Nebula's in. They have to devote a card every single time, and it's not easy in a game like Marvel Snap to be playing a card constantly every single turn in one lane when you have other locations to win. Especially because a Nebula deck doesn't even have to win the Nebula lane. She's just gonna slowly ramp up in power completely on her own. So I think this card's just completely broken. It's going to get nerfed. I'm like pretty sure it's going to get nerfed because it's going to see play in every single deck. It's already doing really, really well from what I've seen. Just in like the first couple of days of the season. It's been out for like 2 days and it's already just one of the best cards in the game right now. Obviously, I mean, it's just so obviously the best. And again, it has so much synergy. It has synergy with the other Guardians where you can predict that they're going to play a card there. And so you play your Guardians cards. I think it has a lot of synergy with cards like Storm, where you can change the location so that nobody can play stuff there. And then it's going to start slowly ramping up in power. Like, let's say you play Storm on turn 3. On turn 4, they'll probably play something there, but you can maybe play like your Groot or something. And then turn 5 and turn 6, you're basically guaranteed to get 2 procs of Nebula, that's ridiculous. That's a 1/5 for like so cheap. I don't know. This card feels crazy. It feels like it's going to, every single game, it's going to be at least a threat. You don't even really have to build around her. You don't have to play things like Storm. If you play like a Magic deck, I mean, I think she gets even better because you have an extra turn. Again, there's only 4 spots in a lane. So unless they're playing like a bounce deck, you're almost guaranteed to get like at least 2 procs of this. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think this card's awesome. I think it's great. It's really cool. However, there's something that I haven't seen a lot of people talk about, okay? And that's that this is the season pass card. And it's probably going to get nerfed. So there's 2 problems with that. First off, I don't know if I like the idea of an incredibly strong, versatile card being the season pass drop. Because I feel like in a lot of ways you're kind of forcing people to pay the $10 to get the card that everybody's running in like 90% of decks. To me, I think that cards like Lizard, like imagine if like Lizard was a season pass card. How ridiculous would that be if Lizard was a season pass card? And he's being played in like almost every deck. If you need a 2-drop, you play Lizard, and now you have to pay $10 or you're not going to see him for like 4 months. You know what I mean? Like that just, I don't know if I like that. That feels like a really bad use of a season pass. To me, I think they nailed it on the head with a card like Hitmonkey and a card like Nimrod, because these are very situational cards that they fit a very specific archetype. You know, Hitmonkey, he has his bounce decks. He's got the Sarah Miracle style decks. And you don't have to play him. He's not like, you know, a game-breaking card, but he does fit really well into a couple archetypes. Same thing with Nimrod. I mean, he's not the most powerful card, but if you're running like a Galactus deck or a Nimrod Destroy deck, he has that really unique archetype niche that if you like, you can get him and it's cool. But now we just have Nebula as the season pass, and like, you're literally like, you're going to see this in like so many decks that like, I feel like you kind of have to spend the $10 or be ready to spend 6k tokens on her next month, because again, she's not going to be a series 4 card for like 2 months, and she's not going to be a series 3 card for like 4 months. I don't know. I think that's just a little ridiculous. It's not really a problem with Nebula, it's more so a problem with locking new cards like this behind the season pass and then making it really difficult to acquire them without. So I don't know. Unfortunately, I feel like this is like, it's the closest the game's been to like pay to win for me, where it feels like you kind of have to pay $10 to get this card. You kind of have to, like, otherwise you're just gonna be, you're gonna be so far behind, I feel, everybody else who's running this card. So not a huge fan of that. The second problem that I have with a card like Nebula being a season pass card is I don't know if I like the idea of season pass cards that get nerfed. It happened with Zabu in the past when Zabu was really, really broken. But I think we're going to see this happen again here. I think this card is looking to get a nerf. And it feels really bad. Like, I mean, there's nothing like illegal about it, right? But it does feel really bad to like ask people to pay like $10 to get this card from the season pass, because I do think that the season pass card is kind of like the big selling point of the season pass. So it feels really bad to ask people to pay $10 and then like nerf the card. I don't know how much I like that. That just kind of, it just doesn't feel very good to me. And I would rather they release more unique cards that are situationally good, or you can build an archetype around, that are more on the fun side or more on the interesting deck building side, than these super versatile, like just crazy strong cards that will just see play in every single deck until they get nerfed. Now, as for nerfs, there's a couple of ways that they can do it. I've seen a couple of people say like maybe they could change it to be 0 power or -1 power, which I think are okay changes. I don't know if I like the -1, because that feels, I don't really like just changing cards to be negative powered and nerf them. For me, I think the most interesting would be to actually change the ramp effect of her. So instead of getting +2 power, what it would do is it would start as a 1/2, but every turn your opponent doesn't play a card here, it would get 1 power. So after 1 proc, you're tied back up to a 1/3, which, I mean, you're almost always getting 1 proc on this card. But if you wanted to make it a 1/5, you would have to get 3 procs. And I think that's kind of fair. So a 1/5 getting 3 procs, that seems like a lot more fair. And the +1 power makes this, I think, a lot easier to deal with. It doesn't feel as overwhelming when you see a Nebula on turn 1 and it's like, well, shoot, now I have to deal with this like crazy scaling card. So that's the direction I hope they go. Regardless, I mean, I still think it's a crazy strong card. So I'm giving this one 5 stars. It's a 5-star card for me. Okay, moving on. High Evolutionary. Damn, everybody is so excited for this card, and I don't know why. I mean, I do know why. It looks really cool. At the start of the game, unlock the secret ability of all your cards with no abilities. I don't think this card is actually all that interesting. Essentially, to me, what this card reads is, hey guys, we just added 7 new cards to the game, but if you want to play those 7 new cards, you have to put High Evolutionary in your deck, which costs 6,000 tokens, so you better go buy him. And the cards that he adds to the game are actually really, really damn powerful. So we can kind of go over those, because I mean, to me, this is what's actually interesting about this card, is they basically release 7 new cards. I mean, unless you're trying to like play your favorite Cyclops variants, or you really love the thing in your deck, these are fundamentally 7 new cards. They're not going to see any play in like the vanilla archetype Patriot decks, because High Evolutionary has no synergy with Patriot. He completely changes these cards if you put them in your deck. These are fundamentally completely new cards. They might as well have had new artwork entirely. They just kind of, I think, found like a convenient way of adding these cards in by having, cards that everybody already, for the most part, owns. I guess you might not have Wasp. I don't have Wasp, so. Anyways, we got these new cards. We can kind of go through them real quick just to show what they do. Wasp, she's still gonna be 0 cost. Afflict 2 random enemy cards here with -1 power, so you are kind of getting 3 power for 0. Pretty strong effect. For Misty Knight, when you end a turn with unspent energy, give another friendly card +1 power. So this is kind of the start of what I call the off-curve archetype, where basically you're going to be playing turns off-curve. You're always going to be floating some power, or floating some energy to gain a bonus effect. And we kind of see this already with cards like Sunspot and She-Hulk. You know, they do work, but this is kind of building that archetype a little bit more. And you'll see that there's kind of 2 archetypes that these cards are designing: the off-curve archetype, and then also the like the like curse power that you see with cards like Scorpion. So we have Shocker. On reveal, give the leftmost card in your hand -1 cost. This is a pretty unique power. I really like it because it does reward how you're playing with your hand. This is probably going to be the most difficult card to, you know, really maximize its value, but a cost reduction is very powerful. So I do think this card will probably find its way into some decks. Cyclops, when you end a turn with unspent energy, afflict 2 random enemies here with -1 power. This is kind of the combination of the two. You have the off-curve floating energy, and then you also have afflicting with -1 power. Probably not the strongest card though, unless you're able to consistently get this off, and you need 2 random enemies to hit. So he's kind of like if everything goes well, you can really pop off a Cyclops, but he's probably the hardest card because you're looking for 2 different conditions. The Thing is probably one of the strongest cards here. I think he's really damn good. Afflict a random enemy card here with -1 power, and you repeat this twice more. The good part is that it looks like it can hit the same card multiple times. You don't need like 3 cards to get the Thing's effect here. You just need 1, and you can hit it with -3 power, which is often really strong. This effectively puts him up to be like a 4/9 without any synergies. So I really like what they did with the Thing. I think this card feels pretty good. Abomination feels absolutely broken. Costs 1 less for each enemy card that's afflicted with negative power. So you only need to hit 5 cards to basically get a 0 cost 9 power. That's pretty crazy. Like, really crazy. I think with this really makes things like the Thing and Wasp and Cyclops, it really elevates them to a greater level, especially when you already have cards like Scorpion or Hazmat that will see play with this kind of deck. Getting a free Abomination on the board is really damn strong, because you can just play it on 6 and like, I mean, you're good. You're good. I don't know. This card just feels really good. Like borderline. This is why you play high evolutionary good. And we'll talk about that in just a second. And then finally we have Hulk. 2 power for each turn you ended with unspent energy. So again, this is kind of like your big finisher with the off-curve package. Is, you know, you can kind of get like a 24 power card down on your last turn. This kind of feels like it's gonna be pushing Infinite out of the game, to be honest, because if you're already playing a, you know, like a Sunspot She-Hulk package, I feel like Hulk is just so much better now. You only need to have 4 turns where you end with unspent energy. This can also be really cool with anything like Magic or something to get an extra turn 7. Because again, this will kind of grow to be like 20 power pretty easily, I think, if you're playing a deck built around that. So Hulk is kind of like your late game finisher in this style of deck. And again, you'll probably be able to drop like Hulk and Abomination on turn 6 and develop just like a absolute ton of power, like just a crazy amount of power. So I am really interested to see how the off-curve archetype goes. I don't really know if I have like a great deck because I'd have to see it first. But it does have good synergy with things like Sunspot, She-Hulk, and then again the Hazmat like affliction style where you're reducing enemy power already has, you know, cards that will support that archetype. So here's my problem with high evolutionary. Okay, these cards are awesome. These cards are really cool. But I have to buy this card in order to play them. And I have to put them in my deck too. Which, like, I mean, I guess that is a barrier. Like, it's kind of a necessary barrier. But the problem that I have is, like, it kind of just feels like I don't know if I like locking all of these cards behind high evolutionary. because a lot of these cards are actually quite strong and they fit like pretty decently into some archetypes. So for example, I think that, you know, a card like Abomination, there's a very high chance we might see like High Evolutionary and Abomination just slot into Hazmat decks, and that's it. It's just going to be those two cards. And High Evolutionary isn't even, he might not even be played, even though he does have pretty good stats. He's not actually like a really awful card. So, you know, it's not even that punishing because you have like a pretty decent card. You could play this for stats, not the end of the world, even with no effect essentially. And then I think cards like, you know, like you just have an Abomination in your deck now, which is going to be kind of nuts. The other thing that I don't know if I like that much is if this whole archetype ends up being good. I don't like cards that are just kind of like they just build the deck for themselves. So like if you play High Evolutionary and you play like even like 5 of these cards, that's just half a deck that's like built by itself. There's no thought in it. You just put the cards in the deck and they all do stuff. And if it's strong, I mean, cool. Like that, this one card just built you half a deck basically. So yeah, I don't know if I like that a lot. I prefer cards that are like more synergistic or have they already build existing archetypes or they promote new archetypes. Like this doesn't really feel like a new archetype. The High Evolutionary at least doesn't feel like a new archetype. This the Unspent Energy feels like a new archetype, which is kind of cool. So yeah, I don't know if I like that. What I would much rather they do is I wish that he had like existing synergy with like Patriot decks. Now obviously they can't make him crazy strong because if he unlocked the secret ability of your cards and these already worked with Patriot, they would be absolutely broken. So they're kind of limited by Patriot there. But like imagine if this was like an on reveal and it unlocked the secret ability of your cards in your hand. And now you have a really interesting decision to make where you can either play these cards as vanilla cards to get the Patriot effect, or you can play High Evolutionary on 4, and then play these cards on turn 5 or turn 6 to get the extra effect, you know? I think that sounds like a much cooler idea to me, and it would make Patriot a little bit more interesting. It would give it more decision trees. There would be more complex synergies. Sure, it might make the archetype broken, but I'm not that interested in like how broken. I'm more interested in like the complexity and the interesting decisions that you're making with the deck, because Patriot is probably on the easier side, so adding that extra level of complexity just feels like a unique thing that they kind of like a missed opportunity. And then finally, I think if you're going to add a card like High Evolutionary, which I believe this is scheduled to be a big bad series, I don't know if they've confirmed it yet, but I think it's been on the table that this might be like a forever 6K card. I feel like with a card like this, you almost have to buy it, because if like any of these cards end up being like pretty viable, which unfortunately I do think that's going to be the most realistic outcome with this card, is it's not going to be like you play all of these cards. It's probably going to be like 1 or 2 of these cards is so good in a specific deck that you just run High Evolutionary just so you can play Abomination. And I don't know, that feels really bad. I think if they're going to add a card like this, they should just make it free. I know that sucks, and I know that's never going to happen. That's just my wishful thinking. But to me, I feel like this card would be cool if it was free. The fact that it's going to be locked behind 6K, it almost makes me feel like you should drop everything you're doing and just save 6,000 tokens for this card. Otherwise, all of these cards are going to be locked for you, which, like, that feels really bad. So save up your tokens. I mean, it sucks, but you kind of have to buy High Evolutionary. And finally, I guess it's just a general power level. I do think that this card is 4 stars. I think this card's going to be pretty good. I don't know if it's going to be game-breaking, but I do feel like in a Hazmat deck, for example, you just run Abomination with High Evolutionary. Maybe Hulk becomes like a decent finisher in the Sunspot decks, but for the most part, I don't think this is like a game-breaking card. Just a really strong purchase that you kind of have to save up for now. Okay, moving on. We have Howard the Duck. Ongoing, tap this to see the top card of your deck, and it's a 1 mana, 2 power. Now, I don't quite know exactly how this card is going to work, because I'm curious if this is like you can tap it once per turn, or you can only tap it once a game. I would prefer if it was tap once a game, because I think if you can see it every single turn, that makes this card a little too strong. I I don't think that the ongoing effect is quite as good as people are making it out to be. I think this card's a little bit on the overrated side right now. I think the problem with Marvel Snap is realistically, you don't have that much time to plan your turns anyways. So getting to see the next card in your deck, I mean, it might help you with some like snap decisions. Like maybe you could snap earlier because like your Galactus is coming up next, or maybe you're playing a Sarah deck and you see that your Sarah is coming up next, so you'll be able to play it on turn 5. So I do think that there is some use case there. But for the most part, I mean, you just don't have that much like time, you know? Like it doesn't really matter whatever your next card is, you're going to have to kind of play with it one way or another. It's not going to influence your turns that much. It's probably just going to be a snap influencer. And then this idea, because it seems like they're trying to build this new archetype or this new package of like the top card of your deck. I feel like it's just missing like 1 or 2 synergistic cards. Jubilee got changed recently, where Jubilee can now, Jubilee can pull the top card of your deck, which is great. But like if you, let's say you have Howard the Duck, and it's turn 4, and you want to play your Jubilee, and you look to see what the next card of your deck is, and it's not that good. I mean, do you ever want to, like, do you ever hold your Jubilee? I feel like if you're running like a Jubilee deck, first off, you're usually going to be getting something good from Jubilee. And second, like, if you're not getting something good from Jubilee, are you really going to hold her for turn 5? I mean, I guess, like, you can, but then what if you don't get something good on turn 5, you know? So, I don't know. I think this card's, like, pretty good. It's interesting for sure. It'll definitely see play, but I don't think this is, like, a broken card or anything like that. The ongoing synergy is interesting because it does make it, like, susceptible to, like, an Enchantress if they want to do something like that. But for the most part, what I do think is they just need like one more card that works with this like top card of your deck format. If they can just find something like that, then this card will probably get a lot better. So I'm giving it 2 stars. Decent. You could put it in a deck that needs a 1-drop, but it's not anything special. Probably not a 6K token. Okay, moving on. We got Iron Lad. So just like Howard the Duck, this has a very special effect. It's 4 power, or 4 energy, 6 power. On reveal, copy the text of your deck's top card. And so again, it's similar to Howard, where it can, it's promoting this like look at the top of your card synergy, because the idea is if it copies the text of your deck's top card, now you know what your next card is, which is good. I just don't know if I really like this card that much. I mean, it's strong. It's got pretty good stats for a 4-drop, and in general, if you're building a deck around Iron Lad, you're probably gonna put cards that have good text. You're gonna have Iron Man's in there, or maybe like a Black Panther. I don't know. Like, I don't know exact. Like, I feel like it's just so versatile that you could run a lot of different cards with this. And especially if you have, Howard the Duck, you'll be able to see what you get, which will kind of really help you with that planning stage. My only issue with this is it's less about Iron Lad and more about Howard the Duck, because I know everybody thinks like, oh, you'll play Howard the Duck and then you'll play Iron Lad and then you know what you're gonna get. And it's like, that's great, right? That's awesome. But my problem is like, if you're ever in a situation where you're playing like an Iron Lad deck, and you need this on turn 4, just like the Jubilee problem, if you don't have a good card in your top card, are you just gonna pass turn 4? I feel like you have to play this on turn 4 anyways, because if you wait till turn 5, like what happens there? That's just you're just wasting time. Like, you have to play something, right? So I don't know. To me, like, it also kind of has this like weird reverse synergy with cards like Jubilee, which is what you would ideally be wanting to play in this deck. But if you have something like an Infinite or a Hulk or a She-Hulk, these cards tend to go into a Jubilee deck, right? But Iron Lad doesn't actually want those cards because they don't really have any good text to them. They're stat cards, right? Jubilee tries to find stat cards. Iron Lad tries to get good text cards. So there's actually like anti-synergy there with Jubilee that I don't really know. I mean, I feel like you would have to have like the nuts where you have Howard the Duck and Jubilee and Iron Lad, and then you have to see what the next card is, and then you can play your turn 4 based around if you have like an Infinite or an Iron Man. in your, which like, that just seems so situational that I just don't know if this, like, it's a good card for sure, but I don't think the like the top deck archetype is quite there yet. So for me, because of that, because it's just missing like one or two more synergistic cards, it's probably going to get a 3-star. It'll find its way into a couple decks, just like White Queen sees its way into a couple decks, just because it's a good statted card. But it's not going to quite... I don't think this like archetype is quite ready to go yet. Okay, and finally we have Living Tribunal. It is a 6 cost, 4 power, which is really weak. It's actually been buffed to be 6 power now. Recently, I think they buffed that, which doesn't really change anything, with the ongoing effect of split your total power evenly among all locations. And I am pretty disappointed with this one. I think this card is like... It's got one of the coolest effects in the game. The idea of splitting power among all locations. Like, that is a really cool effect. And it's a great character. Living Tribunal is, like, apparently, like, one of the, you know, most powerful, like, omnipotent characters in the whole universe. Which is really cool. I mean, I love that. And the flavor is really cool with, like, splitting your power. It's awesome. It's really cool. But it's a 6/6. Like... That's not that good. That's like that's so whack. Like, are you really... How... You have to be so far ahead by turn 5 to play this? And realistically, like, how do you even make this card work? Like, the total power split among all locations, I feel like you have to have such a situational... Like, you have to have such a situational deck that is, like, exponentially building on, like, 1 or 2 locations. Like... with like an Iron Man and an Onslaught. But then how do you play Iron Man and Onslaught and Living Tribunal and something that actually has power to begin with, like a Warpath or something? Like how do you do that? How do you... I don't know if you can fit all of that in. It feels like you're like... It's like a dream scenario where it happens, and then at the end of the day, like, if it doesn't happen and you don't get, like, you know, your dream location that's like exponentially huge, I just don't think this card is that good. I think that they really missed a golden opportunity with this effect, and it's kind of a problem that I'm sort of starting to see with like these like big bad characters, is that they have to be like 6 power or 6 cost. I think that if this is like a 3/3 or something, like, it looks bad, but if it was like a 3/3 with this ongoing effect, I think that would be so fucking cool. Like, because think about it, if it was a 3/3, you could play this card early. And your opponent can kind of expect it. They can Enchantress it if they want to, so you have that, you know, outplay potential as well. But this is probably not, you know, the best card to be Enchantressing. So it's got a cool effect, but if you, like, it's just you play it too late for not that much, like, impact on the board. And a lot of times, I feel like what's going to happen is you just play this, and then they just win 2 locations anyway, because most decks in this game are kind of built to compete for 2 locations. So if you split across 3, you're probably just going a little too thin, and I don't really see this deck working out, except for a couple YouTube highlight reels. So you'll probably see this card on like YouTube Shorts, but it's not going to be a particularly good card, even with the buff. I mean, the best way they buff it is they make it like a lot cheaper with like no power. I think that's really like the way to go. Also, I saw a couple people interested in playing this in like a negative lane, because, or like a negative deck, because negative already likes to play things like Iron Man, and if you have like, you know, Magic and Psylocke, you can actually get more time to set up your cool combos. But actually changing it to be a 6/6 is actually a nerf in a negative deck. So I feel like the only way that this was even like playable kind of got nerfed too, which like feels really bad for the Living Tribunal. Our boy is not too happy. So yeah, I don't expect a lot of play with this deck. This is getting 1 star from me, which sounds pretty bad, but I think this is a pretty bad card. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. Maybe they saw something crazy with this card, and I'm just missing it. So yeah, that's kind of it for this month. Again, I'm not that excited, except for like, I guess, Iron Lad. I think Iron Lad's cool, but the rest of the cards are kind of meh for me. We'll see how High Evolutionary plays out. Hopefully Nebula gets a good nerf, not like overly killed, because you know, it is good to have something that's competing with that like one drop slot. Otherwise, Iceman and Sunspot are kind of like taking over the field right now. Um, but yeah, that's it for May. Hopefully, you know, my predictions kind of line up, and I wanted to make this like pretty early in the season before we actually see how these cards play out. Obviously, I'm a little cheating because everybody knows Nebula is good, so it's not that crazy of a prediction. But yeah, I wanted to make this, see how things shake up over the course of the month as these cards get released. And probably do one for next month as well for, I guess that would be June, the Spider-Man season. So thanks, guys, for watching. We'll be back with another deck guide probably soon. I just wanted to make a little change of plan and, you know, try out a slightly different format. So let me know what you guys think about this. Or if, you know, you just prefer the deck guides, the game footage with me playing, you know, whatever fun deck I happen to have the cards for that week. Thanks, guys, for watching. I'll see you in the next video.